Good morning, and welcome to part 3 of Lover. I kind of don't quite know how to get into the very first thing that I want to do today, but maybe just a few words. This is part 3. I can't believe this is the third time we're going to talk about Lover. Didn't really plan it that way, but there were every time I finished, I still just felt uncomfortable and unfinished, like I somehow wasn't doing Lover justice, and I noticed some other things too, like the propensity that I have to, and I think I said this about 100 times last time, magician the shit out of everything. And there are some things you can talk about and get really good understanding about, but never really get the essence of the thing that you're trying to understand. And that's hardly ever more true than when we're talking about Lover. So how do you not make the mistake of just talking about it so much that we inoculate ourselves against the very juice we're trying to connect with? And so just by way of true confessions, I'm much more comfortable in the realm of explaining things and teaching and talking about things than I am these others. But that's kind of the point. So I noticed a couple things about myself teaching about Lover. And the first one was I noticed this just heavy feeling right around my heart all the time when I was thinking about it. And at first, of course, I thought, well, I'm sad. I must be sad. I should figure out what I'm sad about. And nothing really was coming that much to mind, although I think I could manufacture a bunch of stuff if I wanted to. But as I just kept listening to that, because it wouldn't go away. When I start thinking about it, or I'd start I'd start preparing. I just was like, can we talk about something else? I don't want to do this. And so it just illustrated for me the point that I would like to make, I think, first of all. And that is in this quadrant business that we do, that I've been talking about forever, where we talk about the sovereign, warrior, sovereign, which is the being part of us, warrior, which is the doing part of us, lover, and magician. The reason, I guess, one of the biggest reasons why we want to talk about it is because it's fun to talk about, for one thing. But the main reason is that we really, it's one of the few things about us that is balanceable. Like if you study the Enneagram, there's certain balance within your type that you can have. There's certain sort of growth that you can do. But when we want to, well, there's nothing more basic, I guess, than trying to get balance amongst the 4 quadrants of us, of these forces within us, these resources, these parts. And we're very much out of balance, I think. I mean, one of the principles I go by in School of Life is that the personal is often universal. I hope. So I use some of my own personal illustrations, hoping that it rings a chord in someone else. So, and we don't really realize how out of balance we are until we try to do something. Well, I'll just say I instead of we, like assuming that you all are like me. My strongest faculty is magician, and I feel comfortable being there. I feel strong being there. I feel creative and excited and happy when I'm functioning in my functional, healthy magician. And it's really the strongest, I guess, or more developed. Maybe not the strongest, but the most developed part of me. And so as I've been thinking about this over the years, I realize, and I've said this before, that I suspect that for a lot of us, magician is the strongest part of or we're most comfortable in it. It certainly is the thing we've been taught to develop and strengthen over the years. And so when it functions well, then great, we get along great. But it is really prone to a lot of like craziness and a lot of unhealth. And yet we're attached to it in such a way that we trust that part of ourselves more than anything else. And for the most part, it works okay until it doesn't, or until your soul is asking for something else, asking to develop these other faculties. And so one of the things that I believe is that as we allow ourselves, give ourselves permission to grow as a whole person, then and we start kind of listening for what's maybe truer than our thoughts or more reliable than our own stuff we can make up in our heads, then that soulful part of us starts to emerge and starts to ask us for shifts, to kind of rearrange the furniture. And eventually that part of us is going to ask to be in charge. And when that happens, the good news is, good, something else, can be in charge maybe. And if it's soulful, if it's really connected, if it's true, it's our true self, it's our real, glorious, exquisite being, then wonderful. That's the good news. The bad news is that the shift is killer. And we don't really want to go there. So part of us wants to go there, part of us doesn't want to go there. And so the rub happens during this shift because we don't know what's happening. And so when any shift that starts to happen, any internal transition that goes on is a bumpy ride. But when we're doing this life transition from letting our ego, letting our best sort of shot at being a grown-up, however crooked, kinked up, and freaked out it may be, that transition, no one teaches us how to do that. And it's not really very supported. And internally, the boss we did set up starts to freak out. And so in my case, the magician, when you give everything to the magician to handle, like when that's the go-to for every situation, then when you're trying to not do that, for me in particular, and take whatever of that as you can, what else is there? I mean, there's this big open, like, holy crap moment where you realize that you're out of balance with everything. Like, what is it? This big, for me, it's fear that opens up, and because it's not knowing. When magician steps off the throne or gets out of the executive chair or whatever you want to call it, then I start to realize, what other faculties do I have? What else is there? What could possibly, how do you, so then, so if we could just stay there and allow ourselves to be in that position and trust that what we're about is waking up these other faculties and strengthening them, we'd be great. But no, magician's just having a fit all the time. And so the next thing we start to do, I can't believe we're talking about this. I don't know. The next thing we do then is go, then I better figure out what these other faculties are. Let's talk about the sovereign. Well, what is the sovereign actually? Let's define what that is. And what about the lover? And how do you actually, there must be some way to get there. So let's talk about 7 steps to connect with sovereign, or 8 things to do to, And so, and we're fooled by that. So this is magician kind of going incognito and hijacking the whole conversation and pretending like it's
somebody else
doing what you're supposed to. You know what I mean? It's not that it's sinister or anything. We just really don't know what else to do, and we feel most comfortable when we understand something. So this is my whole dilemma with School of Life, all together. And I did this to myself. I just want you to know. So, the word is co-opt. The magician loves to co-opt everything. It will co-opt your spirituality. It will co-opt your feelings. It will co-opt your actions. And if you're not, and that's okay. It probably needs to happen. It's probably a big, long phase we all need to go through. Yeah.
The way you set that up, it sounds almost as if the magician is equal to the ego, but don't you think that the ego in the lover space, the ego in the warrior space, has just as much ability to co-opt? Maybe it will look very different, but it has just as much viable energy to take over.
Yes, I think that's theoretically true. Yes.
Yeah, but it's just harder to catch them.
It may be harder to catch them, or it just might be that I'm so heavy on the magician end, and that is so in charge that I don't notice the other. So hold that thought for a second. I'm still in my stupid introduction. So, okay, so maybe that's enough to say about that. Because what I would like to do is, first of all, so does that set the stage, I guess? Just to say, it's a little bit hard. I came to the table feeling really inadequate, and like I didn't want to do it, because when I open up Lover, it makes me feel sad. That's the first thing I feel. And my heart, I can feel my heart like exposed and insecure and kind of, I don't even know what words to put on it, like unprotected or something. And that feels sad, or that feels, I don't know, ominous or whatever. So I just lost my train of thought. I'm the great magician, and I can't remember the path from where I started the sentence to the end. So what I'd like to do then is just open with a heart meditation again, and then while you're concentrating on your heart, after that, what I'd like to do is open the floor and have you ask or talk about the things that have been concerning you about Lover, either things you're confused about, things that maybe you're trying to put together, and we'll just build the talking part of what we're doing around your concerns and questions, and then other ideas that I have had in the last month that wouldn't put themselves onto paper today. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. So if you're here last time, we did this meditation. It's just a heart meditation. It's not fancy or anything. But it's the simplest, most primitive way, I think, that we can focus on getting the juice that we need into our hearts out of the freaking thin air. Okay? So all it is I'm going to ask you at some point to close your eyes, and then you're going to take a deep breath. We're going to do 5 deep breaths. And the only thing I want you to focus on is your heart and your breath. And when you breathe in, I just want you to imagine that you're just breathing right into your heart. That's it. You don't have to name what you're breathing or anything. You can if you want. But just imagine that good air is going right into your heart. And then you're going to blow it out. And then you're going to do it again. And we'll do it 5 times. Okay? Ready? Go ahead and close your eyes. And breathe in. Imagine it's going directly into your heart. You can open your eyes and come back to us. So a little bit about your concerns, and then I want to talk about building resilience in Lover. What's been bugging you, confusing you? What's been making you, I don't know, what's felt good? And I want to just make it negative. About Lover.
It's helped me slow down, I guess.
Yeah?
The sense of being able to kind of look at things from a lot of different viewpoints. And to take it in maybe a more compassionate way.
Yeah, it kind of reorients your relationship to time and things that are happening and purpose, sounds like. Okay, let's go to Mary's question then, as it refers to other ways ego can get involved. And this is a really good, actually something I was thinking about this week. The question was, can't the ego sort of take over and corrupt or mess up the other quadrants too? And I think, yes, it can. And so when it pertains to Lover, I just want to talk about this particular pendulum swing that happens in the Lover quadrant often when you're trying to pay attention to it. And so a lot of us just our lovers are wounded. They're just can be in bad shape, or we have wounds we're trying to recover from, or something. It needs something. And there tends to be a pendulum swing in dealing with that, where we can make errors in both directions. So if we realize we've got some kind of distress or some kind of something wrong in the Lover quadrant, on this end, I guess this would be the shutdown. The shutdown end. So we're just trying to survive the world, right? And children get wounded really early, and in all kinds of ways. And one way that we learn to cope with that is to just kind of overprotect the Lover, or just protect. Let's just say it's because it starts out as just pure protection, because it hurts, So we want to protect that part of us because we feel so vulnerable and we feel so small and powerless. So we build ego defenses in this direction. So for me in particular, it was kind of a shutdown. And we've talked about this before, like if you live in an environment where it's not that okay to feel what you feel, or you're not adequately met as a child with how to contain your emotions, how to process through them, how to be comforted in them, how to let them be robust and accepted. Who had that? Raise your hand if you, yeah. Who had it positively, is what I'd like to know. But then we build up ego defenses around that in this direction. And so we develop patterns in some ways like that. And that was mine in particular. I'll just use myself as an example. So I tried, even though I think I'm wired to be very sensitive and very open-hearted and very, very attuned to the emotional realm, it just wasn't very safe to do that in all kinds of ways, which, too bad, so sad. And that's one of the defenses. Too bad, so sad. What are you going to do? So shutting it down or trying to put a damper on those feelings, not allowing them to be as broad as they are, not wanting to go there because it feels sort of hopeless to go there. As a child, feeling big feelings and having them not be okay what choices do you have then? Either to sort of overflow and exhaust yourself, or to just distract yourself and try to stop, or just try to figure out how to contain it and push it away. So that makes sense, right? On the other side is, and most of us, I would say, on that are on this end. And so this side, how do I want to say this? Because very few of us, I'm just trying to think of children who are wounded by, well, yeah, okay. This is, I don't know, what do we want to call this? We want to call this over focus, maybe, or this is a terrible word, but I don't know what else to call it. Coddling. That's a terrible word for someone who shuts down, because we don't, we're told we don't want to coddle, you big baby, those kinds of things. So coddling means something different to those of us who normally shut down. But I have noticed this, particularly lately, outside of my life in some ways. But when I watch parents parent these days, I see this often out in the shopping malls, or sometimes in the waiting room of my office, and sometimes just out in the world. In order to not treat your their children the way they were treated, there's a swing over here to make sure that these children get ultra validated and ultra surrounded and ultra comforted. Yes?
Oh, this is such a trigger of mine right now. It's funny you should be mentioning it, but I recently got introduced to the Facebook site Raising Children Unfundamentalists.
Uh-huh.
And I basically want to choke everybody that posts on there, but
It was so hopeful as a title.
it's exactly what you're saying. And it's like, I was raised, spare the rod, spoil the child, so that when my child is walking down the aisles of Target and throwing everything on the floor, breaking bottles and stuff, I just want to negotiate with him about what he's feeling and maybe look at some other ways of expressing it. And inevitably I end up making some snarky post about your child is a spoiled brat and maybe you should look at some, I haven't said that, but I think
You want to, though.
just open my door.
Yes.
This is my latest soapbox pet peeve, and I probably need to get off of raising children. Oh, they're going to kick me off.
Yeah, maybe they'll kick you off. Okay, so thank you for
Got it.
thank you for illustrating that, because I was really struggling with how to say it. So you see it out in the world a lot, where and it's dangerous. Of course it's annoying, it's irritating, and to be in the presence of children like that is really kind of frightening, because you know that you're harming the child. And how are you harming the child? So, because this is going to apply to us and how we deal with ourselves. What?
It's like in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Veruca Darling, yes. Yeah. And why is that wrong? Why is it bad to overindulge or to coddle?
Because life isn't going to do it, and you're not going to develop the skills to deal with the inevitable boundaries and shutdowns that life is going to present them.
Okay.
And how to find that sort of inner resilience when it does, without knocking all the shit off the shelves at Target.
Right, yeah. So it builds bad humans to start with, which frightens me. That's the thing that frightens me. But it's bad for the child because you're not really preparing them for life.
Right.
And it's bad for the child because...
I feel like it would make them feel incredibly unsafe, because as a child, if you have no one creating boundary or structure for you, you're out of control.
Yeah.
And when I'm out of control, I very scared and unsafe. And I think I would want my child, if I ever had one, to feel safe.
Yes. So it's this sense of terror that happens when there are no boundaries and when there is no container and something's happening on the inside that no one is bigger than. So a child, and when the parent or the caregiver comes in and joins the child in their distress and validates all of the childlike things they are thinking in the midst of that, you are not helping them. You're scaring them. They want to know that something is bigger than them and that they can experience these deep emotions in some kind of a container so that they don't feel like it's just a big flood that's going to completely overwhelm us. So that's children. Okay, so we kind of get that point. What?
I have one more illustration that is a very different, maybe demographic than what Hope described. Is my son has worked with kids who have had zero parenting, and they haven't had the shut down parenting. They've had what Claire described as just zero parenting, and they're the ones that end up in the affective needs center because they have had no boundaries, and so it doesn't look like the entitled little spoiled kid. It's the completely abandoned kid who is addicted and gets suspended from school all the time because they don't know how to do any of that.
Yeah, there's no skills being taught.
Exactly.
Emotions are powerful things, and we need them, but they need to be used for what they're for, I guess. And we need to be able to manage them in a healthy way, which is really kind of what we're talking about when we're talking about resilience. So on this other side, here's another thing that I have noticed lately, and it's been in my own profession since I've been in it for about 30 years now. I got in the late 80s when we were all talking about the inner child, and about shame was a big deal. It was kind of the early days of learning about shame in the late 80s. And a lot of the people that I was running with were coming out of really rigid kinds of systems, that was just the way that people raised their kids in those days. And so we thought the problem was everybody was shut down, so the solution must be everybody needs to open up, right? Not a bad assumption. So we talked a lot about feelings, and we talked a lot about the inner child, and we thought if we could just give ourselves this big space to feel the feelings and to be in the feelings and to treat ourselves the way we didn't get treated as a child and blah, 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 which is good. Don't want you to hear me say it was bad. However, I did notice on this extreme end that some of my colleagues, and perhaps myself to a certain degree, we let our inner child stay in a state of perpetual sadness and weakness and loneliness or whatever. We'd go there and we'd feel the feelings, and then we'd leave, and then we'd go back there and feel the feelings, and then we'd leave, and then we'd go back there and feel the feelings. And I think that's part of my struggle internally, is that if I go there, I know enough to kind of know that there's some vulnerable part of me, and I need to sit with that part and be compassionate, and I need to blah, 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 I need to. But there's never any movement. There's never any resilience built, because I would go there and then it would feel really sad, or I'd have a cathartic moment or something. I'd close it back up and then go back to my life. Does that make sense? So what I was never taught, and what we really didn't understand until the last few years, is that what we want to build is resilience, the ability to make movement. And I think part of the problem with that for me, and why I like the word resilience rather than healing, is that I, with stars in my eyes, believed that we were entitled to be completely healed, and not only healed, but restored to to the point where, as if nothing bad had ever happened to us. I honestly believe that. I believed that. Stupid as that sounds to me right now. It was in there because healing has that sort of connotation to it. And so it just got a little bit like doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results and missing a significant piece. So back to the question about the ego. This is kind of what the ego does. It's trying to just cope. It's trying to compensate. And so it will try one thing and try something else. And so when we have the over focus on coddling or over focus on the emotions, we're giving these emotions a lot of power. And they have a lot of power. But they're driven sometimes by things that just aren't true. And in particular, the thing that isn't true is usually if we're working on something that's not an active, like something like grief or something like a disappointment or something like that is just a normal type of suffering. But if we're triggered by something, then it's like the ego creates this sort of these flu-like symptoms. And so I want to introduce you to a little concept that I am calling emotional flu, because it really helped me this week to kind of get out of some flu-like symptoms I was having myself. Okay? So are you getting how we've got these, when the ego gets in charge, when we get triggered, the ego is the first one to step up to try to save the day, okay? And here's how the ego can get it wrong on either end. Either shut it down or open it up in a way that is unboundaried or that validates the wrong thing. So, because the lover and magician are on the same plane, and we're used to doing things on this plane, when we get out of whack, which is a phrase we've been using this fall, when we get out of whack, we tend to stay on the same plane to fix it. And I just want to tell you, I'm so tired of that I just want to bang my head against the floor. And I think sometimes when it takes getting tired of it to ask yourself, is there a different way? Well, one of the things that I thought of was that I feel bad, I wonder why, here's some reasons why, oh, that makes me feel worse. Or that makes me feel better, but it's not giving me what I need. Like I understand, I feel better by understanding, but it's not really touching the thing. And mine in particular, because magician is so acrobatic, I could think of so many different reasons why in so many different realms and frame it so many different ways, and then think I was really healing myself. So when I found myself having symptoms this week, I just kind of, like I said, went bang my head against the wall. And the thought occurred to me, you just have the flu. What if you just had the flu? How would you treat yourself if you were just sick? Because I was sick, actually, and that's probably why I had these emotional symptoms too, is I had a cold. I didn't like it. The reason I like this illustration about having the flu, because I was feeling small, I was feeling lonely, I was feeling needy, I was feeling frustrated, I was irritable, I was afraid. All of those are symptoms of some kind of thing I fell into. And I liked framing it that way rather than, oh, what is the matter with me? How come I'm feeling this way? Why am I right back where I was like 5 years ago? Haven't I made any progress at all? Oh God, and look, you're going to be talking about these things, resilience? Are you kidding me? That's on the same plane, right? And I'm so tired of that I thought, wait, what if I just tried something else? Got off this plane and maybe onto this plane instead. And so that's one little trick for dealing with the emotional flu. If you try to get on a different plane, either go under it or over it. So under it would be, what if you just try not to figure it out, but just be with yourself in a different way? So self-compassion, rest, companionship, taking an action, going outside, like doing something different with yourself. And so that's kind of, well, in my mind, I thought of going on a different plane, so I didn't actually do anything, different. But that thought was there. Comfort, do something for yourself, something kind for yourself. That's in the doing realm. And then, or go above it, which is kind of, let's take 25 steps back and look at this, change your perspective coming up. So that's basically what I did. Was I feel like crap. I'm not helping myself. This is not going anywhere. So let's take a few steps back. So I took a few steps back and took some deep breaths, and I just thought, I'm really sick right now. I'm really screwed up. And that's an interesting thing to notice. Like, you can be screwed up and you can feel screwed up, but sometimes you don't know that you're in an altered state. Like you've been captured, you've been hijacked. Does that make sense? So if you're practicing being in the other quadrants, then you can catch that sooner, because if you're feeling a little more resilient in general, and then you get the emotional flu, it's a bigger contrast. So I think that's what happened to me, was like, God, I hate feeling like, what is the matter? God, ugh, I haven't felt this way in a long time, and this is really stupid. And then I went, oh yeah, normally you haven't been like this for a long time. That's a good thing. And so just naming it as the flu, rather than the way things are, when you're caught up in the pendulum, or when you're doing the magician thing, it just is the way things are, and we're screwed. But if you can go under it and then go over it, sometimes in the over it, you can kind of go, oh, wow, I got the emotional flu. I don't know why. I don't have to track down every little freaking trigger. I don't need to like dig up all those memories. I don't necessarily have to. It's not that that's bad work to do, but when you're as old as I am, and you've done as many times as I have done, you better figure out something else. Okay? So, anyway, these are, does that make sense? Like, this is somehow how the ego hijacks lover. And your handy-dandy tool box, you can just put in emotional flu. Sometimes we just get funked. And so when we do, try to do something on a different plane than that. Okay? This is the problem of not being able to organize my thoughts. Any questions, thoughts, reflections about that?
I've had conversations with a girlfriend back in Cincinnati that has been going through some rough things, and she says, I just have to remind myself it's not always going to be like this.
Yeah.
And I just have been able to use that phrase a lot. It's not always going to be like this. That's really helpful, just to recognize that.
Yeah.
I've got the flu, and it's not always going to be like this.
Yeah. So let's talk of just a few minutes about a healthy lover. And then I want to go into building resilient, practices that build resilience, so I don't spend the whole time talking. I'm glad you brought up the ego thing, because there's a distinction that I'd like to make in the lover quadrant that doesn't always get made. Partly that's my issue, because I'm always thinking when I go to lover, something feels wrong, So I forget that that lover is there for a really important reason, and we want to build strength in the lover quadrant in an appropriate way. So we need to remember that emotions are useful and powerful. And when they're clear and clean, and appropriate to the moment, and not infected by the ego attachments like shame and fear and worry, and shame and fear are basically the viruses that get into our emotional life and give us the flu. Shame and fear. And so emotionally, learning how to get clear of those things so that our emotions can do for us what they're supposed to do would be a good thing, right? So for me, I had to remember that just having strong emotions is a way to allow my heart to work out. So to exercise itself, to become robust and strong. So in my own mind, I have to break the myth that emotions, vulnerability, connection are dangerous. Those things, and making a shift into valuing emotions, vulnerability, and connection, helps me realize that my lover can be a strength and a resource and a healthy, robust aspect of my being. And that's kind of what we're all after, right? But because we often get the emotional flu, and some of us have had the emotional flu for decades, it gets infected. This infection of shame and fear keeps us in an ego hamster wheel, because we're always trying to fix something that really isn't broken. We just never got the memo. Or we're trying to pre-suffer so that we won't suffer later. Or we're trying to restrict our lives because of the fear of God knows what. And all those things affect our emotions. So when we go there, it gets all messed up. So that being true, and we spent the better part of 4.5 years basically trying to untangle that stuff, it just helped me to realize that emotions, vulnerability, and connection are the hallmarks of the lover quadrant. And they're not just something we have to carry around with us because we can't prevent it, or that we have to protect because we've been wounded. The potential exists that our lover quadrant can be badass, can be robust, can be one of the strongest parts of us, and the most valuable parts, not just to us, but to our families and to the rest of the world. So there's not going to... We could probably spend a whole long time trying to figure out how that can be true and what to do about it and how to blah, blah, blah. But that thought this week was really, really powerful for me. That inside of me exists a highly sensitive, highly wired to be perceptive and connected and capable of a wide range of emotional existence and connection with people. That's how I was wired. But it got sort of shriveled or atrophied, or to the point where I knew it was precious, so I had to protect it. And then I tried to heal it, and then but to step into its full power, to consider the possibility that my heart, my lover quadrant, could really be a powerful force. That was kind of a new thought, as strange as that might sound, you know? So this equals strength and power. Emotions, vulnerability, connection. A strong lover is strength and power. Just wanted to say that. What else did I say I was going to say? It's a weird feeling, you know, to be standing up here with a 61-year-old brain, trying to talk about things, getting all wound up, thinking I'm going someplace good, and then getting halfway there, and then forgetting where I was going to go.
One of the things that connected for me as you were talking was, you know, an original model of my true self being here, and I've created this false self here. So my work is to chip away the false self, you know, kind of like a quote I heard about, Michelangelo when he made David. Well, David was always in there. I just had to remove the pieces that weren't him, you know. And so that was kind of my thinking was, okay, in order for, you know, my true self to come forward, I've got to get rid of all this other stuff. And then something shifted, and it kind of reminded me as you were talking here, maybe it's not so much getting rid of the stuff that's not your true self as much as it is allowing your true self to be fed so much that
Yes.
it just bursts out.
Yes.
And
Thank you.
That sounded like a lot less work.
Yeah, it's a lot less work. It's a lot less work. And it's more affirming. It's more integrating. And I was a big proponent of the false self thing for a long, long time. And I just started to think, you know, it's maybe not the best picture, because it really motivates us to be working on ourselves in a destructive sort of way, you know, get rid of bad things. Marty had something first, real quick.
Oh, I was just going to say, this might go back to Mary's original question about the 4 different things, but like for me, I feel like this is where I live out of. Like I don't have to talk myself into any of those 3. Those words are like, oh, that's me. Or it feels like it connects with me. So I'm wondering if that means that the magician piece, like you know how you say you're the magician, like do I live out of that space then? And
I don't.
do enough thinking?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I overthink it, but
And I'm glad that you brought it up, being a 2
okay.
on the Enneagram, because 2s, in a sense, don't have as much, like, they grew up in the strength of their emotional, in the strength of their heart. And so one thing I think about 2s, well, especially in contrast to 9s. So I'm a 9. We put, there's like a boundary out here. If this is where, you know, my space is, I like to be back here. So that there's a lot of space between the precious and my boundary. Does that make sense? That's kind of 9 in a nutshell. 2s are all around, like they fill up all their space and they spill out into the room. You know, their emotional warmth and presence and heart is uncontained, and so they're there. And I have looked at that a lot of times, going, what would that feel like? How scary would that be? My gosh, you know, you're just always go in full-hearted, like right up to the edge, right out there. And I can't conceive of that. And for whatever reason, I don't really know. But, and there may be other Enneagram types that don't do this shrinking back thing, but are out here. And certainly the unhealthy 2 leads with the heart in so many ways that, especially when it like powers up with an unhealthy warrior or something, then their love can end up being the opposite of what they really want it to be. So that's how ego hijacks someone with a high capacity, a strong capacity in the heart, and can, you know, wreck that. So 2s need to be able to value themselves inside themselves and not keep trying to prove themselves by how much they can love and how much they can make it better and how much they can just add to the to the world by helping them so that they can figure out that they're okay on the inside. So,
And you could go to codependence.
yeah, codependency is the, you know, the ego defense of the two. And in a way to
Or the ego co-opting lover.
yeah, the ego co-ops lover by trying to control everything by more heart. Okay? Oh, go ahead. Hope you. She was wait. Hold.
This is good stuff. I recognize through my own experience that what is on the board, it has borne out as true. I noticed last week when I was watching one of Roy Moyer's accusers, who was tearfully going through the details of her sexual assault by him, and she was crying a bit, that I was wishing she wasn't crying.
Mm-hmm.
And although I recognize the power and the genuineness of my own emotions, and I certainly have parented my children to express theirs, in that moment I felt the weight of our culture towards a woman that is expressing that kind of emotion as weak, cynical, manipulative, disingenuous, and hysterical, overly sensitive. I could go on. I've been called those things myself because I'm also a 2 and often an unhealthy 2. And so I recognize this is true, but I also recognize the challenge that our culture and our society, particularly in the United States of America, presents to us as women who are trying to land in the power of our vulnerability.
I can add one thing to that comment. That's so, so true. If you want to think about it in quadrant speak, the United States of America is warrior magician and has been for a long, long time. Warrior magician. So, pardon?
Since inception.
Yeah. Born of rebellion, struggle, fierce independence, that kind of thing. And it really goes against, well, we're seeing that now. It's just right out in front of us. Warrior magician wants to stay in control. And whatever else is valuable about the vulnerable, about the human, and about the connectedness there's a war going on, really. And so that's very true. And I think last time I talked about the essence of misogyny is in the lover quadrant. But also, think about being a man now. Like some of you are old enough to have raised men, and probably more sensitive men than in your generation. And the dilemma that they encounter now of allowing themselves to be vulnerable, to be feeling people, to be holistic, like soulful men in this society. So imagine that stuff that comes against them when they are vulnerable or weak or show emotion, on the one hand, from society, but also from the women in their lives. So there's also this kind of backlash, and it was Brene Brown who mentioned this when she first started talking about vulnerability. She talks about how after one of her talks, a man came up to her and said, I get it. Vulnerability, that's the strength. That's it. But I have to tell you, the women in my life do not want me so. Like they want me to have my feelings, but they don't want me to be vulnerable because it's, we're just trained. It's not a bad thing about women, but I'm trying to talk about for everyone, male and female alike, this sense of emotions, vulnerability, and connection becoming a strength and not a weakness, and not a shameful, pitiable, or fearful needy thing. This is kind of one of the big challenges of our collective psyche right now. Okay, Jenny.
When you were first talking about the strength and power that come from the healthy lover, to me, I just see a real connection with the sovereign with that.
Yes.
And then I started to think, well, if there's a real healthiness in each of those, it seems like there's so much more. I don't know if it was collaboration, but communion with all the,
All the
all
parts.
the different quadrants.
Yeah.
There's something about the strength and power to me that really is part of the sovereign of owning that part. Being
Yes.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, you're kind of just exposing the trick, which is, and we'll make a shift now because that signals where we want to go. Because what you're sensing is that in order to look at lover in a healthy way, we really need this sovereign view and the sovereign blessing or energy, and to reframe the lover from weak, pathetic, sad, needy, small, wounded, to this is your greatest strength. To let's find some resilience. Let's figure out how to make this part of you stronger. That's really coming from a sovereign place. And the goal, I guess, of being a whole person, the ideal person, let's put it that way, is one who is solidly in the sovereign seat enough that they can accurately assess and bless and work with all the other parts in a way that makes those other parts healthy and contributing to the whole, for the good of the whole and the good of society, basically. So we really, and that's a little bit of how we get above it, is to kind of remember, oh yeah, there's something bigger than this here, and there's something beyond the emotional flu. And we're not just trying to heal some pathetic part of ourselves so that we don't feel bad, but we really want to live our lives in a way that it's creating resilience, robustness, strength, power, and value in the lover quadrant. Yes.
I'm having trouble kind of seeing how that could be lived out in culture, like in the world. By me personally, I can see like doing inner work and kind of like trying to come to terms with things internally. But I just can't. I don't know that I would ever feel safe living it out, especially like I just feel beaten down every time I turn on the news. I just feel beaten down.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna put vulnerability out there if that's what's coming at me all the time. Like, I just find it, I don't know, I find it hard to put it into practical kind of, this is how this could be lived out, like being able to visualize how that would actually be lived out in the world.
Yeah, that's. I hope people on the recording heard that. But how to think about offering your lover energy to the world in a way that doesn't just increase your sense of feeling unsafe. Like, how do you actually do that? And am I required to? Am I required to put my vulnerability out there? I don't know. I don't think so. But I think what I want to leave you with today is the thought that, one thought I want to leave you with today is that you just being whole in and within yourself contributes to the world. So just because you might be strengthening and being at peace in yourself doesn't mean then you have to go do something and expose yourself to the world in a way that would not be what you're ready for or acceptable, or talk about pearls before swine. That's there for a reason. So it's your sovereign right to handle your life in whatever way you choose, and to be where you're at. You know, if you're working really hard to heal from some nasty shit that makes you feel unsafe in your own body and in the world, then your work is to nurture that and strengthen that inside yourself. And as you are more whole in yourself, there's got to be a way in which that's good enough in some ways, you know, or that contributes to the world in some ways, because you are affecting whoever you're in relationship with, and that's a good thing. And for them to get the pieces of your heart that are available to them in a whole and healthy way, that's contributing good to the world. So be wise about, of course, and while we're in this era in human history and in this place, in this world, our strength of our vulnerability and our emotional capacity still needs to be protected. So you got to ask yourself, is it wise to be doing this? I was really struck by the clergy that went to the Senate building yesterday or day before yesterday, and got arrested for speaking Bible verses out loud. They probably got arrested because they didn't have a permit or because some technicality, I'm sure. But they banded together and they decided ahead of time, we are going to get arrested, so let's be okay. You know what I'm saying? So that's a way they added warrior to a healthy lover, and they did this love warrior thing by speaking truth to power and by allowing themselves to be arrested. And the impact was, I don't know what, but the optics were terrible. You know, these really quality, solid, grounded, convicted, you know, full of conviction people being carted. I just was like, holy crap. That was power in vulnerability. Okay, I want to do some practices, but
I was just going to add to your thing. I think I feel the same way every time I turn on the news, and so it can feel like a really scary place. But for me, having a couple people that you can really be vulnerable, really be emotional, really have that connection, that's all that's gotten me through this last year. Like, I feel like I don't, and maybe that's my personality, but I wouldn't be able to just nurture myself. Like, I need that. But I'd say it's really important to be wise on who you do that with, because you can be really vulnerable with the total wrong person, and then it has the complete opposite effect.
yeah. Yeah, so
Assignments have been really good too. That gave me like a new frame for kind of new eyes with which to see. It was from Father Greg Boyle, who wrote Tattoos on the Heart and Barking the Choir. But he said he's done trying to save the world. He's trying to savor the world.
savor the world.
Savor the world. And in the act of savoring the world, that saves it.
Wow.
But honestly, that's how I'm trying to, because I'm a 2 and I've always thought about, I want to save the world, I want to do my part to make a difference and all that, and it's like, I'm just going to savor it. And that simple act, just that change, he says that's actually what saves it. So just go out and delight and enjoy and love really well, and that saves, and it saves you, but it saves the people around you as well.
So
Yeah.
what does savor look like to you? Just loving well?
I don't know yet.
Well,
I'm
when
like, I want to do that.
Well,
Yeah.
I get, my imagination gets, I mean, I feel like he's doing it at Homeboy Industries, if you've heard anything about it. It's happening. So I get kind of an image, and that, you know, and he would say it's best lived out in proximity to the poor, and, but yeah, it's no longer, for him, it's no longer about saving, it's about savoring, and I spent my whole life thinking I wanted to save the world, and I don't want to do that anymore. And it just feels really monumental for me. So, and it doesn't feel as vulnerable. I mean, in a putting kind of that like I have to do that, where it was kind of get to step into this in a much healthier way. So.
I love that. I'm going to be thinking about that for a long time. Right away, when I think about savoring, when you savor some good food, you take your time with it, you're mindful with it. You know, savoring is a way to be present with something and taking in all the virtues of the thing that you are savoring. And so that automatically puts you in a mindful place, which is just on a whole different plane than trying to save something or trying to fix something or trying to judge something. It's just being present with it. So that's one thing that occurred to me while you were talking. Okay, I wrote down a bunch of a few things by way of resilience, like how to build resilience. But I just want to briefly mention a few of them, and then we're going to do one meditation. Okay? I was going to do a whole hour's worth of meditation, but last time we talked about nurturing the lover quadrant, right? So when we think about resilience, we want to think about coming underneath and nourishing and strengthening, right? So that we have the capacity to move across the whole realm of our emotional life without catching the flu. That's the goal. So, or if we do catch the flu, that we know how to take care of ourselves so that we can rebound. That's what resilience sort of suggests, is that not that your life is perfect, but that when you get knocked down, you can come back up and you're not damaged by the thing that happened to you, right? That's resilience. So in order to build that resilience, we have to have a strong heart. And there's so many different things that can be said, but I'm not going to say them. Three things that I thought of. Oh, I was going to say, we talked about the food groups, major food groups for a lover. So if you want to go back to those, you can look at those. There were a lot of them. There's infinite number of them, but the three of the most powerful ones that I thought of this in thinking about this would be how to build resilience. We have gratitude. Gratitude. Let me write these all down. Gratitude, love, and abundance. These are realities and concepts that when practiced, not just thought about, but when practiced, can really strengthen and nourish the heart. The reason we bring gratitude is that one of the things that happens when we have the emotional flu or we're caught in shame and fear is that we are focused on what we lack, some perceived lack. So if it's shame, some lack of goodness inside ourselves. If it's fear, some lack of security or some lack of something, about the future or whatever. And gratitude is focused on what is in front of us that we do have. And so to do a gratitude meditation, what I was going to do is have you find something in this room. The smaller the better. Start small. And pick something in the room that you can be grateful for. And then spend at least 5 deep breaths allowing yourself to feel grateful for that blue ornament. Or, you know what I'm saying? You're cultivating where gratitude lives, because gratitude is in charge of some really good brain drugs, basically. And so as you're accessing that, you are releasing good endorphins, but you're also focusing on something that is in your life that you do have. And part of a big reason why we get sick is that we're focusing on what we think we should have, what we in fact maybe should have, but that is focusing on lack and creating an emptiness inside of us that's not good for us. So, gratitude. So I had lots of really good gratitude meditations I was going to do. Abundance is another one. I post, if you were on the Facebook group, I get posts from David White all the time, and that poem that he wrote, "Everything is waiting for you." That just kills me. It just kills me. But it's the secret of abundance. It's the secret. It's the assumption that we are surrounded by animated objects, maybe, that are waiting to assist us. The universe surrounds us in order to enable us and bless us. And whether it is or not, in actuality, the thought that it is really good for you. So I don't want to argue the merits existentially of whether the universe is a benign place or not, or whether there is a God, or whether there is someone working on our behalf. But one thing I do know is that when we live out of an attitude of abundance, and that we are supported, and that everything is waiting for us, it shifts us and energizes us and empowers us. It's good for the heart. So any kind of abundance meditation that you want to do would be great. But the big one is love. And so I kind of want to do a love meditation, if you don't mind. I got to make one up. Because love really is, in a sense, all we need. Everything flows from love. Goodness, life, health, blessing. It's all about love. And love is a force in the universe that has more substance to it than just the idea. So the heart was made to love, was made out of love, and is made to love. And so when we allow ourselves to receive and give love, we are doing the highest bang for the buck exercise of the heart that we can do. So I would like to do a love meditation as soon as I think of one. So well, I had one in my head. But while I'm thinking, why don't you close your eyes and take a few deep breaths. Okay, I remember now. Just take one more deep breath and kind of sink down into your chair, into your body. Allow yourself to be supported. Notice how your heart is being beaten and how you're being breathed. Just allow yourself to relax into the miracle of how our bodies work. I'm going to take one more breath right into the heart, and as you breathe in, think about opening your heart a little bit more. Just in this moment. Doesn't have to stay open. We're just practicing opening. And now I want you to ask your heart to show you someone that you love. And if there's not someone that you feel strongly that way enough about, it can be a non-person. It could be an animal. It could be some kind of spirit being. Could be a fictional character. But see that person, that being, in your mind's eye. And let your heart feel the love that you have for that person, that being. And as you breathe in, draw from the stores of love that you have inside yourself. Turn on the faucet and let it fill up your heart, and notice how it feels. Notice the sensation in your heart that love creates in your body. Notice if it's heavy, or if it's expanding like a balloon, or if it feels sharp, or gentle, or tender, or exuberant. And breathe that in. Let yourself savor and enjoy the sensation of your heart in love. Then take one more breath, and on the exhale, send that love. Imagine sending that love to another person. Keep sending. And then send some more. Next, I want you to hold in your heart and in your mind's eye yourself. Maybe it's yourself at a younger age. Maybe not. Maybe it's yourself today, in this moment. Maybe it's yourself at a future date, how you would imagine yourself being. See if you can access love. That could be in the form of compassion, if not actual affection, tenderness, blessing, and let your heart just fill up with that kind of goodness on behalf of yourself. See if you can feel it. And when you feel it, notice the sensation of it. Notice what's happening in your body when you let your heart expand in that way. savor the feeling inside your heart of the love that you have for yourself. Let it saturate you. And now release that love toward the image of yourself that you have in your mind before you. Send that love to the part of you that needs it. Release it with the outflow of your breath. Now let's go big. In your mind's eye, imagine the world, the planet, humanity, however you can picture it, whatever you feel like you can access. And allow the feelings that you have for the world that are kind or compassionate or hopeful or appreciative or compassionate to seep into your heart. And if you can't love the whole world or you feel afraid of the whole world, then just think about the concept of creation. And allow yourself to love that and let those feelings seep into your heart. And notice how it feels. Admit to yourself, I really do love this country, damn it. I really do love humanity, despite everything. I really do love this earth. Whatever's there, let yourself admit it to yourself and feel it. Take a moment to affirm your heart that it's big, that it can hold love for the whole world inside of it. Let yourself feel just a little bit proud of that. And then, as you take a deep breath, release that love out into the world. And again. again. And now, before you open your eyes, just let that protective layer come over your heart, the one that's real and true, the one that knows its limits, the pericardium that protects the heart. Pull it back into place. Give yourself a little blessing. And come back to the room. Okay. Any, what was that like? That was kind of cool, huh? It's 11 o'clock, so we're going to end here. And thanks for coming. Help yourself to the pottery table. And my challenge for you would be to, as many times a week as you can, come up with some sort of meditation, some sort of sitting with the big stuff, gratitude, love, and abundance. And it just seems like this is the season to be dousing our hearts with those kinds of things. And we'll see you in January, first Saturday of January. So I hope that your holiday season is lovely and very nourishing.